So, King Charles just broke royal tradition again, and honestly, at this point we should probably just accept that this monarch quite enjoys shaking things up. Forget cosy armchairs in Buckingham Palace, surrounded by gilt-framed family photos. Forget the predictable fireplace backdrop that's been a staple of royal Christmas messages since your grandmother was watching on a black-and-white television. This year, Charles has gone full Westminster Abbey for his Christmas speech, and there's actually a rather beautiful reason behind it. We're talking faith, pilgrimage, reflection, and a year that's been considerably kinder to the royal family than the absolute roller coaster that was last year. But before we dive into why the King decided that Britain's most iconic church was the perfect setting for his festive address, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and smash that notification bell, because we're serving up royal content hotter than the palace kitchen on Christmas morning. Now, let's talk about this tradition-breaking streak Charles has going on, because it's actually quite significant. For decades, literally decades, the royal Christmas message followed a very specific formula. The monarch would sit in one of their official residences, usually Sandringham or Windsor Castle, surrounded by carefully arranged photographs of the family, maybe a tastefully decorated Christmas tree in the background, and they'd deliver their message to the nation from the comfort of their own palatial living room. It was predictable, it was safe, it was quintessentially royal, the kind of thing you could set your watch by. Your gran would settle in after Christmas lunch, someone would turn up the telly, and there'd be the Queen, or now the King, looking regal and comfortable in their own surroundings. But Charles, bless him, decided that formula was perhaps a bit too dusty for his reign. This is a man who spent his entire life waiting to be king, and now that he's finally got the top job, he's apparently determined to do things his way. Last year marked the first major departure from tradition when he filmed his Christmas message at the Fitzrovia Chapel in central London. Now, that wasn't just a random choice for the sake of being different. That decision came during one of the most challenging periods the royal family has faced in recent years. Both Charles and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, had been diagnosed with cancer at the start of the year. The nation was worried, the family was reeling, and the traditional cosy Christmas message from a palace drawing room probably felt a bit tone-deaf given the circumstances. The Fitzrovia Chapel, a former hospital chapel, was absolutely loaded with symbolism. It spoke to healing, to faith during difficult times, to hope in the face of health challenges. It was Charles acknowledging the year they'd had, while also pointing toward recovery and resilience. Pretty powerful stuff when you think about it, and it showed that this king understands the value of visual metaphor, of using location to communicate deeper meaning beyond just words. So here we are, heading into Christmas, and Charles has decided to keep this new tradition of ditching the traditional settings. But this year he's gone even bigger. We're talking Westminster Abbey, people, the coronation church, the place where monarchs are crowned, where royal weddings happen, where the great and the good of British history are buried. This isn't just any church, this is the church when it comes to British monarchy and national identity. And Charles choosing to film his Christmas message there is absolutely dripping with significance. According to reports, this year's message is going to focus heavily on themes of pilgrimage and faith, two subjects that are clearly deeply important to the king personally. Now, Charles has never been shy about his faith. He's the supreme governor of the Church of England, which comes with the job of being monarch. But unlike his mother, who kept her personal faith quite private, Charles has been more open about his spiritual beliefs throughout his life. He's spoken about interfaith dialogue, about environmental stewardship as a spiritual duty, about the role of faith communities in bringing people together. So using Westminster Abbey as the backdrop for his Christmas message makes perfect sense when you understand how central faith is to his worldview. The pilgrimage theme is particularly interesting because pilgrimage is all about journey, about moving through difficult terrain towards something meaningful, about transformation through experience. And if there's one word that sums up what the royal family has been through over the past couple of years, it's definitely journey. They've been through the ringer, honestly. Cancer diagnoses, ongoing tensions with Harry and Meghan across the pond, constant media scrutiny, the endless challenge of remaining relevant in a modern world that increasingly questions the need for monarchy. It's been a lot. So framing this year as a kind of spiritual pilgrimage, a journey through hardship toward better days, is actually rather poignant. And speaking of better days, this year has genuinely been happier and healthier for the family, which is something we can all celebrate. Charles himself is reportedly doing well with his cancer treatment. He's continued working throughout, maintaining his schedule of engagements and royal duties with impressive determination. That's not nothing when you're dealing with a serious health condition. And more importantly for the nation's collective heart, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, has made tremendous progress in her own cancer journey. Seeing her return to public duties, looking healthy and radiant, has been an absolute joy for royal watchers everywhere. Catherine's cancer diagnosis earlier in the year genuinely shook people. She's one of the most beloved members of the royal family, a mother of 3 young children, someone who represents the modern, relatable face of monarchy. When she shared her diagnosis in that incredibly brave video message, you could feel the nation holding its breath. But she's come through it with such grace and strength, and her recovery has been one of the real bright spots of the year. So Charles describing this as a happier, healthier year isn't just royal spin, it's genuinely true, especially compared to the anxiety and uncertainty of early months when both he and Catherine were facing serious health challenges. Now let's talk about what this Westminster Abbey setting actually means for the visual impact of the Christmas message. Imagine the scene. You've got this absolutely breathtaking medieval architecture, soaring Gothic arches, intricate stonework that stood for nearly 1,000 years, stunning stained glass windows that filter colored light across the space. It's dramatic, it's awe-inspiring, it's deeply connected to British history and identity. Charles, sitting in that space, delivering his message, surrounded by centuries of tradition and faith, creates a completely different atmosphere than the usual sitting room setup. This is Charles positioning himself not just as a political or ceremonial figurehead, but as someone deeply embedded in the spiritual and historical fabric of the nation. It's saying, look, we're part of something much bigger than ourselves, something that transcends individual lives and connects us to generations past and future. In a world that often feels fragmented and chaotic, that sense of continuity and connection is actually quite powerful. The focus on peace and togetherness in this year's message is also perfectly pitched for the current moment. Let's be honest, the world is a bit of a mess right now. Ongoing conflicts, political divisions, economic uncertainty, social media tribalism that's got everyone at each other's throats. People are tired, they're anxious, they're looking for something that brings us together rather than driving us apart. And historically, that's been one of the key roles of the monarchy, to serve as a unifying symbol above the fray of daily political battles. Charles, emphasizing peace and togetherness, especially in the majestic setting of Westminster Abbey, taps into that deep human need for unity and common ground. It's a reminder that despite our differences, despite the challenges we face individually and collectively, there are still things that bind us together. Shared values, shared history, shared hopes for the future. It's the kind of message that works particularly well at Christmas, when people are generally more open to feeling connected to their fellow humans. And let's give credit where it's due. The decision to keep breaking with tradition, to use these meaningful locations rather than sticking to the safe palace drawing room formula, shows that Charles understands modern communication in a way that's actually quite sophisticated.
We live in a visual age. Every image communicates layers of meaning. Audiences today are savvy about symbolism and setting. They notice when someone puts thought into where and how they deliver a message. By choosing Westminster Abbey, Charles is showing he gets that. He's not just reading words off a teleprompter, he's crafting a complete visual and thematic experience.
Compare this to how his mother, Queen Elizabeth, approached the Christmas message. Her broadcasts were wonderful, don't get me wrong, but they were also quite traditional and predictable. Same format year after year, minor variations in the specific royal residence used, but essentially the same comfortable, familiar approach. That worked brilliantly for her reign because consistency and stability were core parts of her brand as monarch. But Charles is a different kind of king. He's someone who spent decades developing his own voice, his own priorities, his own way of engaging with the nation. It makes sense that his Christmas messages would reflect that different approach. There's also something rather moving about Charles at 77 years old, still evolving how he fulfills his role. He could have easily just copied what his mother did, followed the established template, played it safe. Instead, he's willing to try new things, to use different settings, to take chances with how he communicates. That takes a certain amount of courage, especially when you're doing it in front of millions of people and you know every choice will be analyzed and critiqued. The emphasis on his personal devotion to faith in this year's message is also worth noting, because it reveals something authentic about who Charles is. This isn't a man performing faith for the cameras. This is someone for whom spiritual belief and religious practice are genuinely important parts of life. He's spoken over the years about how faith provides him with strength, guidance, and a sense of purpose. Using Westminster Abbey to highlight that aspect of his kingship is honest and real, which audiences respond to far more than carefully managed artifice. And here's something fascinating to consider. By filming at Westminster Abbey, Charles is also subtly reinforcing the sacred nature of monarchy itself. That might sound old-fashioned in our secular age, but the British monarchy has always been deeply intertwined with the Church of England. The coronation is a religious ceremony, not just a political one. The monarch's role as supreme governor of the Church is constitutional, not ceremonial. By choosing this setting, Charles is reminding people that there's a spiritual dimension to kingship, that it's not just about wealth and palaces and waving from balconies. It's about service, duty, faith, and connection to something transcendent. Of course, not everyone will be thrilled with this approach. There will be Republicans who roll their eyes at the whole thing, people who think any discussion of monarchy and faith is outdated nonsense. There will be traditionalists who wish he'd just sit in Sandringham like his mother did and stop messing with the formula. But that's the thing about being king. You literally cannot please everyone. Someone's always going to have an opinion about what you're doing wrong, so you might as well be authentic and do what feels meaningful to you. The fact that Charles is reflecting on a happier and healthier year sets a hopeful tone going into the new year. After the genuine fear and uncertainty surrounding both his and Catherine's cancer diagnoses, being able to say things are looking up is significant. It gives people permission to feel optimistic, to believe that challenges can be overcome, that difficult journeys can lead to better destinations. That's a powerful message at any time, but especially meaningful during the Christmas season, when people are naturally reflecting on the year that's passed and hoping for good things ahead. Westminster Abbey, standing as the backdrop, also creates this beautiful contrast between the permanent and the temporary. That building has witnessed centuries of British history. It's seen monarchs crowned and buried, royal weddings and state funerals, moments of national celebration and mourning. It represents continuity, endurance, the long view of history. Charles delivering his contemporary message in that ancient space creates this dialogue between past and present, between tradition and evolution. It's saying, yes, we honor where we've come from, but we're also actively engaged with where we're going. So what does all this really tell us about Charles as king?
It reveals someone who's thoughtful about communication, willing to break with tradition when it serves a purpose, deeply connected to his faith, and conscious of using his platform to promote values like peace and togetherness. Whether you're a passionate monarchist or a skeptical observer, you have to admit that's a more interesting approach than simply going through the motions and doing what's always been done because that's how it's always been done. As we head into Christmas and get ready to watch this message from Westminster Abbey, it's worth thinking about what we want from our institutions and leaders. Do we want them to stay frozen in time, endlessly repeating the same patterns, or do we want them to evolve, to respond to changing circumstances, to find new ways of connecting with people while still honoring core values? Charles seems to have made his choice. He's a king who's willing to do things differently, to take chances, to use meaningful symbolism to enhance his message. And honestly, in a world that's changing faster than ever, that kind of adaptive leadership might be exactly what the monarchy needs. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Charles's Christmas message and what it reveals about his approach to kingship, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and make sure you're subscribed to Royal Article, because we'll be breaking down the actual speech once it airs, analyzing every word and symbol. Thanks for watching.